Okay. So nice and easy, nice and light. A couple of slow, gentle breaths. And just let your body pick up its own rhythm. The rhythm of the movement, of course, is something that is very much part of this whole understanding of connection in the body. It's very difficult to define these terms. Somebody once asked me, "What do you mean by connected?" And I was like, "Well, everything's connected. It's like trying to describe a piece of music or something like that." So hopefully some of the terms that I use enable you to offer a label, if you like, to something that you're experiencing. But in terms of the connection, it's this idea, if you like, that as soon as you affect one part of the body, and you move in a hip, you move in a knee, you move in the shoulder, everything else makes some kind of response. And of course, the rhythm is something that connects things. It connects musicians in the band, connects people on the dance floor, and so on and so forth. And there's a kind of resonance. So if I was, for instance, with moving my hips, I was kind of doing all sorts of. I get some response in my hands, but I don't get the same kind of regular fluidity that I get if I can get the center of my body moving in this nice steady rhythm. And we start to become aware of physical connections. What is the link between my hip and my shoulder on one side of my body, or maybe on the opposite shoulder, whatever, down into the feet? What physical responses can I be aware of? And also in terms of the fluidity of the movement, this sense of a momentum, this sense of a flow, an energy in the movement. Excuse me just a moment, just realised I've got to. Yeah. And we want that flow to be harmonious. We want the energy to flow freely through the body. And that's where a steady rhythm is quite useful. When there are points in Tai Chi systems where might get something like a very quick movement or something. And part of the challenge there is to actually do that without losing the overall sense of flow. So, and in terms of Chinese medicine, that flow, of course, is one of the key aims. And just raising your arms. Now put one foot forwards and just pushing your weight gently forwards and backwards, and just allow the center of your body to turn. See which way it's turning. The most sort of obvious way for it to turn is towards the direction that your feet, that the foot is pointing in. So when I go back, I would tend to turn this way. When I go forwards, more towards the front. You may find it's the opposite way round. So don't really concern yourself with that. Just be aware that it might be that, say, as you go back, there's a bit of tightness, a bit of stiffness there. And so rather than turning this way, your body naturally avoids that stiffness by turning the opposite way. You can do something about that in the long term, but it's not that important at the moment. There's two ways you can look at this movement, and both are part of the whole picture. You can push from your foot, or if you prefer, bounce out of the foot because your weight's going in, but you can use the leg to push you to and fro and let the center of your body follow. Or you can turn in the middle and turn, and that would tend to take me forwards or backwards, or at least depending on what my intent is. So we start off in Tai Chi learning to move the weight, so that clearly involves the legs a great deal, letting the center respond. But as we build these connections between different parts of the body, in this case between the legs and the center, the movement of the weight, then we can, in a sense, choose which of these we want to actually do at any particular time. And then on the other side, so this is quite a good exercise for reflecting on those elements. Okay, now feet parallel and rolling your weight forwards and backwards a little bit, your hands out in front of you. So notice how my fingers are spread out here, the thumb slightly curved in, nice spaces between fingers, and in particular between the thumb and the forefinger. Try not to hold your hand stiff. And again, see if your body can settle into a nice steady rhythm. It's a bit more difficult when we're moving slowly. Slow rhythms are more difficult to sustain. But again, we're looking to feel that one way or another, our whole body engages with the movement, either by following or leading, by contributing something, or by maintaining the structure, or simply by providing passageway for the movement. And bring your hands around in front of you, settle your weight down, and try and maintain that rhythm to change exercise. Another thing about rhythm is that it can produce a sort of resonance. You know, if you've got two musical instruments in a room and you play one, you might get a response from the other one, and whether that's the one aspect or another of the music being played, sound being played. And so, if you've got the rhythm of the movement, say in your legs and your hips, but you're a bit stiff in your back, if you can just deliberately sort of soften a little bit, maybe by changing your posture slightly in your back, then you may just allow that resonance to take place, or wherever else in your body you feel the stiffness. And the movement expands and contracts. Expands and contracts. Change to the wild goose, same thing, expanding, contracting. That way of viewing the rhythm between expansion and contraction will actually work for us with most of the exercises that we do. It can also have a great calming effect on our mind, the right sort of rhythm. And there's any number of CDs out there, recordings out there, relaxation music, and you get things like the waves crashing on the beach or that kind of thing. The rhythm can definitely be a part of helping to develop relaxation, certainly, but also a sense of a kind of deeper calmness, which relaxing is one thing. To actually cultivate that quality of calmness, I think, is quite difficult. And changing to part in the clouds. Some approaches to modern dance tell us that everybody has their own rhythm, their own personal rhythm. And I think that comes through very much with Tai Chi. I think when we have that experience of moving to our own rhythm, then there's also this, it aids this sense of kind of gathering, of defragmenting. And then dragon plucks the stars from the sky. One more time. The first and last part of pushing in four directions, you expand and contract. You expand and contract. So then when we start to factor in the two turns, they too become part of the rhythm. We expand and turn, we contract and come back. Expand and turn, contract and come back. Another aspect of this rhythm is that it may encourage your breathing. And everybody here is quite experienced, so it's worth deliberately factoring this in if you're comfortable with this. Feel that expansion in your belly as the arms push out, then in the solar plexus, then in the chest. And that's the in breath, reversing that with the out breath. It may not work if your movements are very slow and your breathing is a little bit faster. Then if you still want to try coordinating that, then the way to do it is to speed your movement up a little bit. Sorry, did I get that right? Yeah, yes, I did. To make the speed of your movement match the speed of your breathing, not the other way around, because you don't want to hold your breath. Let's do one more round. Not always the case that the breathing is that straightforward. For this next one, for instance, it always feels like two breaths rather than one breath. So, particularly when we add the turn to it. So it's either a very long breath indeed, in which case you be careful again not to strain, or else just make it a two breath cycle, or maybe just pass by the breathing, just to let your body find its own way of breathing through this exercise. Add in the turn. And then switch sides. And turn. And roll it back. Expanding, contracting. One more. Standing upwards, hands in front of you, turning and polishing the table. The last time. And just swing out. So that thing about the rhythm is sometimes there a great deal of the time, not always that obvious. I suppose a movement like, say, swimming dragon, for instance, it does expand and contract, but it's quite a slow rhythm and it's not a major feature there. But most of the others, I think you'll find that it's there in one way or another. And sometimes, at least, it will coincide with things like the breathing. It will also obviously point out that qualities like expansion and contraction, this balance of yin yang and so on and so forth. So it's an area that is definitely worth considering. And going back to how we started, just this is a really good way of actually gently waking yourself up, which is why it's such a good warm-up exercise. It's good for the morning as well. It's the difference between somebody running into your room and throwing cold water on you, saying, quick, you've got to get up, or else coming in with a cup of tea and just gently rocking you. So there's an element to this exercise as a kind of early morning exercise. It's very gentle, but also very, very effective. This is stretching between heaven and earth, because again, this really shows the expansion, contraction, and the name of stretching between heaven and earth points out another element of this aspect of yin yang, which is in Chinese sort of cosmology, I suppose you'd call it, where human beings are sometimes described as part of a trinity, standing on the earth but beneath the heavens, and in a sense where the culmination of those two opposites, it's said sometimes. That's a very loose kind of understanding of it, but the name stretching between heaven and earth kind of points at that a little bit. So hands in front of you. One hand palm down, have your left hand palm down, and just rotate as much as you can the right hand till its palm up. Pushing away. And you see, I like to do this slightly diagonally to get that openness diagonally across my back, and then contracting down. There's many ways of doing this, many variants on this exercise. I also like to use a little bit of movement up and down in my hips. Okay, not everybody does that. I think, again, I suppose there's that thing about connection and rhythm there. Like with Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky, though, you could play around with that. You can have it bigger or smaller. See if you can still feel the internal movement without the external movement and so on. And then you can begin to transfer your weight down a little bit. So the hands, at this point, the hands nearly touch, the weight's in the middle. So as much as possible, try and keep that sense of coordination. You might not get it every time, but don't worry. And then you can begin stepping in. And at this point, I generally take a slightly wider than normal stance. So now you can see as I drop my weight down, I come to the middle. I reach the lowest point when I'm 50% in each leg, or try to. And be careful of your knees, but here I can drop down like this, and in doing so, that helps to push my other foot out. When you come up, don't lock the supporting knee. I know the leg gets pretty straight, but don't pull the knee right back. Keep that little bit of a curve in it because it's carrying your weight. One more time. And shake out. Now, hands in front of your shoulders. Gently circling your elbows over, and again, see if you can bring your legs and your hips into this movement. So rather than straining to lift your elbows, which will probably cause a bit of tightness in your shoulders, it's almost like standing in the sea. There's a little wave coming up underneath them. And then turn in and letting your weight transfer. At this point, try and just keep your elbow no higher than shoulder height. Then you don't need to go right over. But try and retain some of this nice fluid rolling in your shoulders. And then bring that into the exercise back. Yeah. The hands come down. Let's get to this point. Turn out a little bit. So I sort of pause in the rhythm really, but then it picks up again by hitting the ball in front of the shoulder. One more on each side. And then cow gazes at the moon. Come into the center, straighten your feet up as much as you can, hold for arms. So going out in the direction, I mean, the arms themselves are slightly curved, but the overall direction is that your arms are 90 degrees to the chest. So your hands are in front of your shoulders. It's your body turning, not your arms going across your body, creating the circle. Change direction. Good. And then check out. So that last point I made, let me show you something. This is Tai Chi Bun, B-A-N-G, and it's often translated as Tai Chi ruler for some reason. It's a specially designed stick for certain exercises, kind of related to Tai Chi. The thing is, you can see the bulge in the middle. If that is in line with my nose, shall we say, then what I don't do when I'm creating the circle is this. It's now out of line with my nose. I turn my body and then it comes up. And as I turn back, you'll see it's still in the same position. And I turn the other way. It's here. So I'm not saying that our arms would never do this in Tai Chi and Qigong. They do sometimes, we're not stuck in one way of doing things. But bear in mind that when your hand gets over that center line, there's always going to be a bit of a pull there. So there's always a risk that you're going to draw the shoulders out of line from the hips. So I'm trying to think of other examples offhand. When we pulse the monkey, for instance, we're here, is there, not there. We might turn a little bit further there, though we don't normally do that in repulse the monkey. You can see on the center line. I'm struggling to think of, but there's lots of movements. Yeah. Pigeon spreads its wings and so on and so forth, of course. And likewise, wind blows the willows. It encourages the center of the body to move. So we're not doing this sort of or whatever. You know, again, we've got that sense of connection between the middle of the body and shoulders, arms, and the middle and the periphery. So really, from here all the way out to the edges of the body, this is the hub of the wheel. And again, that sense of rhythm in the end will come from that. Have one foot forwards. People sometimes say to me, do I use music? And only in very rare circumstances, and not generally in any of my mainstream classes. Because I think that what we want to try and do is to bring the rhythm, the flow of the movement out from within rather than from outside. And I've got nothing against listening to music, by the way, I do it a great deal. But this is driven from inside. And so the music can be a distraction. I know it can help with a sense of flow and relaxation and so on and so forth, but we don't have to have music for that to happen. Even this, there's a kind of rhythm to it. You transfer the weight, you sink. You transfer the weight, you sink or you settle. Here, it's not an even rhythm. So it takes longer to transfer the weight generally than it does to feel the settle in and the push back. Or maybe you could think of those settling moments as being like the end of one rhythmic cycle and the start of another. There's different ways you could regard it. Raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. And extend your foot, the heel, and then your toes down. Press in gently. You might find that actually draws your weight into the foot a little bit. And then on the other side. And then raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. And then take a few full steps. Change direction. Good. Have your right foot forwards. Let's do pigeon spreads its wings. So you start off, and the back leg is the one carrying the weight. So the back leg is contracted or been compressed, if you prefer. Hands on your belly. So the leg expands, and we feel that expansion following the rhythm into the front of the body, and then back again. By front of the body, I'm including the front leg in there. But feel the relationship mostly between what's happening in your belly and your chest, and maybe in your breathing, and the expansion and contraction, or the compression and release is perhaps more accurate way of describing it in the back leg. And of course, that all works with a resonant rhythm. Then sinking back, and your hands out. So here, the expansion and contraction in the upper body is actually more tuned in with what's happening in your front leg than your back leg. None of these ideas, as always, should be sort of set in stone. Our bodies and our movements are far more nuanced and can be explained in sort of like very, very simplistic terms. The way we look at these things draws us into a greater awareness of things. Now change into fisherman cast net. We go back here, and the hands swing behind a little bit. We expand in the front of the body. And then here we contract there, but we expand in the back. So there's nuances, as I say. And then pushing a wave. And then pulse the monkey. So there's an underlying pattern, there's an underlying rhythm, but overlaid on that, like with a piece of music, with a complex piece of music, perhaps with an underlying rhythm, the different instruments, different elements of the music, relating to that rhythm in differing ways. Nothing is stuck in one place. And yet the rhythm does help to bind everything together. So see if you can just do this with the stepping. You don't really come up and down a great deal here, but remember when we did stretching between heaven and earth, we had a very strong physical drop. So that as you go to take the step, get that feeling of sinking in the supporting leg. Just letting go in the hip is really what you want to be thinking of. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. One of the early explanations of the idea of yin yang comes from very old text, the Yellow Emperor's Book of Chinese Medicine, about 2,000 plus years old, and they did that. I think it's in that is described in the treatise on yin yang. They talk about the south side of the mountain and the north bank of the river. So you imagine a mountain next to a river and the sun shining from the south. So the south side of the mountain and the north bank of the river is in light, and the south bank of the river and the north side of the mountain is in dark. So that's yang to yin. Now, you know, even that is almost too basic, because you don't just get shadow and light, you get grays of shadow and that kind of thing. Another image is sometimes the waves and the beach coming in and out. You can sit on the beach and there will be an overall sense of rhythm. It's an interesting thing, but if you watch the waves, they don't go in and out and in and out. It's not that simple. So it's quite interesting as we build from very simple initial exercises in Tai Chi to something a little bit more complex, like, you know, repulse the monkey or something like that. It's almost like we build on layers, but those layers don't exist as something separate from the underlying rhythm. It's a really fascinating process, really, in lots of ways, I think. And each movement, each exercise is slightly different. So don't get stuck in, this is the rhythm, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Observe what is happening in your body, so that mind and body deliberately move in accordance with that rhythm, not necessarily exactly mimicking that rhythm. So weight in your back and pigeon spreads its wings. And then changing. and change. Pushing a wave. Pulsing the monkey. And a few times, just this following step. Bring your feet down. Lovely. Rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Shoulder. Other side. Back. The hips. Release. On your belly. The upper part. Good. Lovely. So coming back to standing. When you think about it, there's a rhythm to the classes, isn't there? You know, we start with a very still element to it and have to get more active and then come back. So that rhythm of yin yang really follows the whole process through to different degrees, to different ranges. So just sinking down, embrace tiger, return to now. One more round. And stand. Great. Well, quickly for me. Suddenly it was past. Look, thank you very much, everybody.
Cheers, Mike. So time flies when you're in.